Welcome back to the next in our series of videos on preparedness.
In the previous video, we talked about the GGRC standard, but how can I use the standard to help me with my planning?
Well, the standard represents the series of goals we want to achieve. We can use it to measure the gap between where we are now and where we want to be with our plans.
Well, that sounds pretty straightforward.
It is and it isn't. As we go through the standard, you're going to need to do a lot of thinking about your own situation. Remember, emergency preparedness is not a task to be checked off a list. It's a way of thinking about potential problems and solutions.
I'm beginning to see what you mean. We need to make plans that address the special needs of our clients.
Exactly. In the last video, we discussed using a systematic approach to planning. I find it's helpful to use a checklist to identify areas I need to work on.
You mean like the checklist in the GGRC standard?
That's right. The GGRC standard has a checklist that asks a series of questions based on the standard. It uses a 6-point scale that helps you determine where you are with that particular task. Once you know where you are, you can decide what you need to do to improve.
So I can do this from my desk, right?
Definitely not. Remember, we need to make our plan specific. You're going to need to meet with a lot of people, such as the fire department, your staff, and even your clients. And you're going to need to do a bit of walking around.
Walking around?
I always start assessments with a walkthrough of the facility. No matter how well you think you know it, it's amazing how much you learn.
So what am I looking for?
Start with the basics, your fire safety plan. Look to see if it's posted and clearly understood. Check your evacuation routes. Make sure that there aren't any blocked exits or locked doors.
I already do that fairly often.
That's good, but it doesn't hurt to double check. Let's go a bit deeper. You should also look for non-structural hazards in common areas and people's rooms. Suppose some of your facility was unusable. Consider what areas could be used to relocate people or shelter people from other facilities. Consider what space you would use if you had to shelter in place from a hazardous material spill.
I see what you mean. I have to look at my facility not as I do every day, but as I would in a disaster.
Now you're getting the idea. Your facility is really a disaster resource, and you should be flexible in deciding how to use it.
But I don't think I have the things I need in order to do this. You know, like extra blankets or cots.
That's the point of the walkthrough. As you notice things that need to be fixed or identify things you will need, write them down. While we're talking about things, let's consider some of the other logistics issues related to your facility. Who provides the food, water, and fuel? Will they continue to do so in the event of a disaster? It's one thing to have several days' worth of food and water on site, but how will you cook it?
So I may need a portable generator or cooking stove.
Yes, if that's how you decide to solve the problem. Remember, there are no right answers, only the answer that is right for you. You also have to consider special dietary needs and food preparation. What if someone can't eat solid food? Just buying a stockpile of emergency rations may not meet our clients' needs.
So I really need to do some more thinking about needs rather than just checking things off on the list.
Absolutely. Now that we've done a walkthrough, let's consider a few other planning issues. First, let's consider how you will organize for response.
What do you mean by organize?
You need a game plan. You'll need to give your staff specific assignments in a disaster. You'll also need to figure out how to reassign important jobs if everyone doesn't make it in.
That sounds complicated.
Not at all. It can be as simple as having an emergency procedures guide that provides a checklist for specific emergencies. You can also make a clipboard for important jobs that can be handed out at the time of the disaster. Or you can have a binder that contains a series of checklists. The things to remember are to be specific and to keep it simple.
I'm really going to need to sit down with my staff and find out what I can expect from them.
Yes, and tell them what you expect also.
Do you guys have any specific questions for me?
Discuss things like how you would get in touch if the disaster occurs after hours. Have fallback plans for when the phones aren't working.
That makes a lot of sense. I've never really thought about what it would be like without telephones.
Most people don't. We're so used to them. Speaking of staff, you should encourage them to develop a personal preparedness plan. They will be more likely to report for work when they know their own families are safe.
I think I'll encourage them to take extra training, like the Community Emergency Response Team training.
The CERT training is a great idea. The employee gets information on personal preparedness, and you get the benefit of having someone trained in disaster skills. You should also consider training that is needed for your plan, such as the shelter management training or first aid courses provided by the Red Cross. You can even sign up for amateur radio operations training. All of these training courses are inexpensive or free.
So far, we've talked about my facility and staff. What about our clients? How do I prepare them?
Again, this will depend on the unique needs of your clients. The Title 22 and Fire Code requirements for evacuation and disaster drills are a first step.
I can't imagine evacuating our homes.
Unfortunately, it's a very real possibility. How will you organize it? Some of your clients will require assistance from your staff. For others, a buddy system can work well.
So these are some of the disaster assignments we spoke about.
That's right. Let's consider the next step, relocation. It's not just a question of getting people out of the facility. You need to have a plan of where they will go and how they will get there. Just as importantly, you'll need to know where they are and how you will follow up on their care.
That sounds complicated.
It is if you don't have a plan. Trying to do this at the time of a disaster is almost impossible. That's why you have to have a plan, and that plan should include more than one or two options.
You know, it just occurred to me that some of our clients travel outside of the facility. How do I plan for that?
Begin with individual needs. What should a client have at all times?
Well, certainly they should have identification.
That's a start. Look at the standard, and you see they should also have personal and medical information with them. One way of meeting this requirement is the Medical Alert program. Remember, you want to be able to locate the client if anything happens, and you want their medical needs taken care of if they have to be relocated.
Anything else I should think of?
Keep focusing on the client. Does he or she travel outside the facility on public transportation? If so, what's your plan for getting them home safely or finding them in a disaster? If you use a contract service, have you discussed the service's emergency plan with them?
Another thing to add to my list.
That's okay. When you start out, you're going to have a big list of things to do. We'll talk about how to make that list manageable in the next video.
So as I understand it, the standard is a goal, but I really have to base my plans on the needs of my clients. Basing our plan on a realistic understanding of a person's need is the first step to developing a truly effective plan.
That's right. I hope this video has helped you assess your readiness. If you have any questions, you can always visit our website.
Thanks.